attributes Africa's poverty to racial qualities. On the 13th of July 2005, he was sentenced to 2 months in prison for this. On the 6th of June 2006, Sweden's National Day, he held another speech that would land him yet more criminal charges.
Jag fick 2 månaders fängelse för brottet hets mot folkgrupp. För att jag vid en tidigare demonstration hade sagt, och nu citerar jag ser inte på något sätt att jag menar det här, men då sa jag att jag tror inte att jag är ensam om att må dåligt när jag läser om hur svenska tjejer har våldtagits av invandrarhorder. 2 månaders fängelse fick jag för det. För hets mot folkgrupp. Och för de som inte känner till lagen så betyder det, så att säga, och nu citerar jag igen, att man uttrycker missaktning för folkgrupp eller annan sådan grupp av personer med anspelning på ras, hudfärg, nationellt eller etniskt ursprung, trosbekännelse eller sexuell läggning. Och det var det jag gjorde när jag sa att jag mår dåligt, eller jag tror inte att jag är ensam om att må dåligt när svenska tjejer våldtas av invandrarhorder.
On the 10th of September 2007, he was sentenced to 2 months in prison for this speech, but this is overturned on the 26th of February 2008, when he is acquitted. It's hard to make out any logic in whether defendants are declared guilty or innocent. Perhaps this is how the courts go about with the proceedings. A case that garnered quite a lot of international attention, especially when American Christians received word of the guilty verdict, was that of Christian minister Oki Gilliam, who in a sermon on the 20th of July 2003 addressed the topic of homosexuality. After the sermon, the Swedish gay lobby RFSL reported him to the police for hate speech. A representative of this lobby felt the sermon legitimized threats, violence and violations of LGBT people. On the 29th of June 2004, the lower court sentenced him to 1 month in prison, sending shockwaves throughout the world. It became apparent to people everywhere that there was no free speech in Sweden. The courts in this country didn't hesitate to imprison Christian ministers. This unwanted international attention seemed to have an effect on later verdicts, however, because he was acquitted in the second court on the 11th of February 2005, and finally in the Supreme Court on the 29th of November 2005. The gay lobby continued to campaign against him and tried to have him excluded from society, and they managed to get him expelled from the Swedish chapter of the sobriety organization IOGT on the 30th of January 2008. This move saw thousands of Christians leave this organization in protest. Another case of a Christian being charged with hate crimes was that of the owner of a Swedish website called Bibeltemplet, the Bible Temple in English, a man named Leif Liljeström. On this website he described homosexuality as a sin and also had a forum where people discussed the Bible's view on this and other topics. One person writing in this forum advocated the death penalty for homosexual acts, which led to another criminal charge for Liljeström since he hadn't removed the post right away. In 2003, a law student reported the site to the authorities and charges were raised. On the 26th of April 2005, a lower court sentenced him to 2 months in prison for hate speech. This verdict was appealed, and on the 18th of May 2006, he was sentenced to 1 month for hate speech and assisting hate speech for the other person's forum post. This verdict was appealed to the Supreme Court, which acquitted him of the charges. This case had also received international attention. Sweden was making a name for itself as a country that imprisoned Christians. There have been non-Christians sentenced to prison for criticism of homosexuality as well. On the 10th of December 2004, 7 people had been distributing flyers at a high school, flyers which described homosexuality as destructive and argued that the gay lobby had too much power. On the 11th of July 2005, 2 of the men are sentenced to prison. The verdict is appealed, and they are acquitted in the next court on the 14th of December 2005. Finally, in the Supreme Court on the 6th of July 2006, no prison sentences are handed out, but 4 of them are found guilty and sentenced to probation, and 3 of them are sentenced to fines. In the aftermath of this trial, the authorities found out that one of the men had licenses for firearms. In April of 2008, the police decided that he didn't have the right to own any kind of firearm and searched his apartment, confiscating 4 rifles and a pistol. He was left with this notice. It has been brought to the attention of the police that you, because of your conduct, no longer can be considered fit to own firearms. You see, it's been claimed that you have had dealings with people and organizations that can be linked to crimes as listed: public order, the Constitution, and national security. These cases are but a small fraction of the many hate speech convictions delivered by Swedish courts, averaging something like 50 guilty verdicts per year.
Agree, sir. What we need are larger prisons, more money.
Not a chance, my dear fellow. The government can't be concerned any longer with outmoded penological theories. Soon we may be needing all our prison space for political offenders. Common criminals like these are best dealt with on a purely curative basis.
Absurd as it may sound, Swedish law actually makes it possible to serve as long a prison sentence for hate speech as for first-degree murder. The maximum sentence for hate speech is 4 years. The minimum sentence for murder is 6 years. However, the Swedish penal system only requires serving 2/3 of the sentence if the inmate doesn't deviate, making it 4 years. Hence, a person sentenced to 4 years for hate speech could theoretically spend as long a time in prison as a convicted murderer if he violates his sentence by attempting to escape. Peculiar justice indeed. The policing of thought undertaken by the Swedish government has at times used more direct and extrajudicial means, something that's more a rule by decree than a rule of law. Following the publication of the caricatures of the Islamic prophet Muhammad in the autumn of 2005 by the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten, a Swedish party as well publishes those and other caricatures in February of 2006 on its website. The Swedish government realizes that this might cause diplomatic problems, and on the 8th of February, the foreign minister and the security police pay a visit to the internet provider that the party's website is hosted on, and the next day the webpage is shut down. In the days to come, the government denies responsibility, and on the 24th of March, the Chancellor of Justice declares that this action hasn't been a violation of the laws against censorship and that the government hasn't done anything wrong. Arabic mass media writes that the Swedish government informed them that it shut down the web page and that it apologized for what had happened.